Hello and welcome to Hindsighting, where we discuss all the movies to win the Best Picture Oscar and try to figure out if this picture truly is the best or is time rendered a different verdict. I'm Edward Clow. My guest today is a semi-finalist in the Nickel Fellowship for his script Ghosts of Kiev. He made the 2015 blacklist for his script Castle Drive. His latest script, All Things Broken, sits in the top 1% of the blacklist website. He sold his pitch for Special about the woman who created the Special Olympics and wrote the screenplay. Currently, he's a prosecutor in Baltimore City. Matthew Scott Weiner, thank you for joining me.
Hello, Ed.
Today we're hindsighting not a single movie, but an entire decade. All right, Matt, so we are back to do the rest of our list. So we're talking about the best movies of the 2000s. We've already done our number 10 through our number 6s, and we are now going to go our number 5s through our number 1s. So let's get right to it. Matt, what is number 5 on your list of the best movies of the 2000s?
Number 5 is Children of Men.
Nice.
And 5 through 1 was really hard because they kept shifting, right?
Interesting.
I didn't know. I knew I wanted Children of Men on here.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know where.
Right.
We talked earlier about like watching young filmmakers grow.
Mhm.
And Alfonso Cuarón, he was given the Harry Potter franchise for Prisoner of Azkaban.
Right.
And it took such a left turn from the Chris Columbus movies that, like, what a gamble by the studio, because if audiences didn't respond to Prisoner of Azkaban, none of the other movies were going to matter, right? Because they would have lost their audience. It went, and talking about color, right? It went from gold and red tones to blue and green and dark and shadowy and Gary Oldman, and it's like, what the fuck is this, right? And it was a banger. He nailed it. And so I'm like, whatever this guy does next, I want to see. Eventually he does Gravity, which is one of my favorite films, in my top 10 films of all time, and Roma, and he just thankfully he's got a new movie coming out soon.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he does. Or it might be a miniseries, but he doesn't work unless he wants to.
Yeah.
And Children of Men, it's still not even out on 4K. I don't know why. I don't know if this movie bombed or not, but
I think it did okay. It got some Oscar nominations, and it definitely didn't bomb. It definitely was. It has a level of prestige that should warrant a 4K. It's not like
but Gravity doesn't have a 4K yet either, so maybe he's remastered. That's what he's been doing.
Now that I know that, it's probably a James Cameron thing where he's keystring these things, or Fincher. Like if there isn't one, that means he's putting the brakes on it probably for good reason.
Children of Men, it's on the list here with Shaun of the Dead, which are both kind of like end of the world movies, right? And when you have end of the world movies, they kind of fall into two categories. The beginning of the pandemic, right? Or the zombie outbreak, or well into the future, dystopian, cities have crumbled, and, Book of Eli, Denzel walking around with a Bible, whatever.
Yeah.
Those are kind of your two end of the world kind of genres. Children of Men is the world is ending slowly, but society has to still exist. People still have jobs. There's still television shows and news. People are still collecting art and putting it away for future generations that might not even exist. Like, refugees being rounded up, and paranoia and depression and all of these things are in the middle of outbreak and dystopian future. And I'd never really seen a story in that space before, except for maybe something like Soylent Green. And there are some comparisons to Soylent Green too, right? Because like one of the things in Children of Men is the world sucks. It's not going to get any better. Here's a pill, commit suicide, and it's very serene, right? And in Soylent Green, you can go into that room and it's very serene and calming, and then you die and turn into food. Sorry to ruin Soylent Green, but Soylent Green is people. And so Children of Men, it took all of these things, and it could have been sci-fi, it could have been schlocky, right? But it's so grounded in Clive Owen's character and his history as this, like, he used to be this rebel and now he's a cynic, and what's going to happen. And what the inciting incident's going to be. What this hero's arc is going to be. It's on paper. If you were to look at it on paper and break it down into beats, it's save the cat. It hits everything. Even the last shot where the boat comes in and it's like he's sacrificed himself, but it wasn't all for nothing. The boat, right? Like the human project is a real thing, and it's like there's hope. There's the chance that humanity may survive. It hits all of those beats, but when you watch the movie, you can't see the index cards on the board, and that's Alfonso Cuarón just like really nailing how to visually tell a story and elevate a piece of material into an art form. And the performances are all great. They do this one thing when they're escaping the refugee camp that it was the first time I saw it. I've seen it replicated in a lot of movies since then, but there's like an explosion and some debris or blood hits the lens of the camera.
Right.
And it's like documentary filmmaking. We're still following them through the city, but it's not a clean gate. You see the dirt on the screen as we're moving through things, and it really puts you right in the middle of that action.
Right.
And so I've just been like, once I saw Seven, I was on the Fincher train. Fight Club sealed it. Once I saw Azkaban, I was on the Cuarón train, and then Children of Men sealed it. And even if he only makes one movie every 10 years, like I'll be first in line. So Children of Men is my number 5.
Yeah, really great movie, and a movie that I liked when I saw it, and you're making me really want to revisit it. I mean, it's not on my list. I'll spoil that part of it, but yeah, I remember we saw that together. I think you had already seen it, actually. I think you sort of took me to see it. I may have that part of it wrong, but yeah, I think Azkaban's actually a great example of what we're talking about with Del Toro, which let's give. They're both from Mexico and they're friends, and they were both very similar. There was, and Inarritu too. All three of those guys are buddies. I think that was, and that's a year before Batman Begins. So that's where it really starts, where it's like, let's give this guy, because my daughter's a huge Harry Potter fan. The books get darker there. And I think that was a conscious decision. I don't know if Chris Columbus left or something, or maybe he just wanted to go and do something else. I know he went and did Rent, so maybe that's something that just pulled him off of it. But I think that's a great, and not for nothing, the producer of Harry Potter, David Heyman, did Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Marriage Story. He's currently in charge of James Bond. So I think
I was waiting for that. Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, I think it was very smart to. I mean, yeah, that's people think of Nolan as being the canary in the coal mine, but I guess it was, Del Toro and Cuarón, because it's the same year, 2004, I think. I know Azkaban's 2004. Yeah, I think that's he's definitely an interesting director. I mean, he's more than an interesting director. He's definitely technically proficient, but is always, he's always pushing things. And yeah, I'm like you. I wish he were more prolific, but the movies. He's not Woody Allen. He's not going to make a movie every year. That's just not his style. Like Woody Allen and even Eastwood, Eastwood was almost a movie a year and a half. Like both those guys are really prolific. Or even somebody like Ridley Scott, who we talked a lot about in our very first episode. Ridley Scott's like that weird exception where he makes a movie every year, but they're $150 million budgets. They're like these big shit movies that would take anybody else like 6 years to just develop. But yeah, Children of Men is definitely probably like a sign of when things were getting more interesting in this decade. It's like the end of 06, and that's when I've sort of said, like, I feel like this decade starts to show some life, notwithstanding.
Maybe that is because of 2000, because of 9/11, right? Like maybe that is because the decade had its growth stunted by this trauma that it couldn't 100%. Really find its identity for an extra couple of years.
Yeah, and I think that's the part of my theory. I always mention 9/11 because I think I've said this 800 times already, but I'll say for the last time, I promise, because we're not covering the 2000s after today, is I do think the perception of the national mood is that we can't do anything challenging. And here we are, it's 5 years later. So that's enough of a cushion for, this is Warner Brothers, for a big studio to say, okay, well, this kid did a good job on our biggest piece of IP. And I'm sure Cuarón was offered Batman, Superman, Marvel. I'm sure all these guys are offered every IP under the sun. And clearly he said no, and we're better off for it. So great movie, great pick. My number 5 is 25th Hour. speaking of 9/11,
Great
a
pick.
fucking segue I would never thought I'd say. This movie came out this movie came out only 15 months after 9/11, and I did not want to see anything dealing with 9/11, but Spike Lee hits this really small bullseye of being poignant and exhilarating at the same time. There's a famous, or what I think should be famous, fuck you speech that is so astounding. There's a scene, I can't imagine people don't know it, but if you don't, there's a scene where Edward Norton is basically talking to himself in a mirror, and the mirror image takes on a different personality, and he gives this sort of fuck you speech, which astoundingly is in the David Benioff novel. People thought that Spike Lee added that because it's such a Spike Lee thing, because he's going through, he's saying all these really horribly racist things. He's going through every group in New York and why he hates them, and it feels like Do the Right Thing. It feels like that great sequence of Do the Right Thing where every ethnic group is saying racial slurs to the camera about another ethnic group. But yeah, the this movie is what's interesting is that it's not about 9/11, but Spike Lee felt rightly that he couldn't shoot a movie in New York and not acknowledge 9/11. And I think that it's sort of the best movie about 9/11 because it's not about 9/11. It's
Yeah.
9/11 is draped all over this, but nothing about the plot of this movie is about it. And I think I mean, only someone like Woody Allen or Sidney Lumet are people I would trust with making a movie in New York after 9/11 and having the sensitivity to deal with it. And Spike Lee is definitely as much an animal of New York as those two guys. The performances in this movie are incredible. Edward Norton, Barry Pepper, Rosario Dawson, Anna Paquin, Brian Cox, and of course, Philip Seymour Hoffman. I mean, this is just an incredible cast. Um, yeah, I mean, I think I just mentioned Woody Allen and Sidney Lumet. I think Spike Lee might be New York's. I think those three guys, Spike Lee, Woody Allen, and Sidney Lumet, are all New York's greatest cinematic poets. So, I mean, yeah, this movie, liked it when I saw it, and it's really never left my head. I mean, this movie's just is really just astounding.
I would agree with that, and I think with Spike Lee, he's one of the only directors who can take any material and layer it with a social commentary that doesn't feel like he's shoving it down your throat. If you haven't seen Highest to Lowest yet, that movie is a very paint by numbers kind of movie done by any other director.
Mm.
And what Spike Lee does is he takes racial trauma and generational trauma and layers it on top of this very generic kidnapping story in a way that makes the movie so relevant and fresh that you excuse it for its kind of like thin plot. Like the weaknesses of the movie are so overshadowed by the metaphor, performances, and just Spike Lee being Spike Lee, right? And 25th Hours, Spike Lee is, I mean, his fingerprints are all over that movie in a way that if anybody else made that movie, we would not be talking about it. And I come back to the ending of that movie a lot.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so for anyone who hasn't seen 25th Hour, you should have already. So
you can spoil it. It's fine. I want to talk about this too. So go ahead.
Yeah. There's a huge fantasy sequence at the end of the movie. So it's like, should Edward Norton? It's like the night before he goes to serve a prison sentence, and should he or should he not try to run away and flee and not go to prison? And Brian Cox is his father.
It's his father,
right? Yeah. And I think he narrates I haven't seen it in a while.
He talks over the whole thing, and it's I want to just say, as good as
I'll let you do, because you just watched it, and I plan on watching it soon again. But...
No. We can talk about it together. Yeah. So Brian Cox is driving Edward Norton to prison so he can surrender himself to go to jail for 7 years, and he's basically saying, "What if I keep driving? What if I don't take the exit to the prison?" And Brian Cox basically, we see Edward Norton's life if he were to run, and Brian Cox says, like, you go to a small town, you get a new identity, I'll be dead and with your mother, and then you reach out to Natural when the time comes, and the Terrence Blanchard score, which is incredible in this movie, you just see basically it goes to Edward Norton being an old man. I know that sounds fucking cornball, but it's beautifully done, and but it's a fantasy. They're not trying to trick you. And it's Brian Cox is now very famous for playing, this asshole on Succession, and he's great in that movie. And Brian Cox was, of course, the very first Hannibal Lecter, but this might be his best movie performance. This is the same years, like, he's like sort of the heavy in the Bourne movies, because like there's like a sweetness to him in this movie, even though he's still like a tough son of a bitch. And I think that the ending of 25th Hour is sort of devastating, as is the whole movie. And what's great about this movie is that, like, you know, there's subplots in this movie, and that's a dirty word to me, that work. There's an entire subplot where Philip Seymour Hoffman is like a prep school teacher at a very high end school in New York, and Anna Paquin, who's never been better than she is in this movie, is one of his students, and he has a crush on her, and obviously that's a very dangerous thing, and that's the kind of thing I normally would say, God, just lose that, you don't need it, and that could be its own movie, but I mean that in a good way. Like, that is so well handled. There's a scene that the two of them have in a bathroom that is just remarkably well acted, and it's just another reminder of what a tragic loss, Philip Seymour Hoffman's tragic death was. I mean, not that I need to remind you, but I mean, this is also, I think, one of Edward Norton's probably top 3 or 4 best performances. I mean, American History X is his best performance. It's not his best movie. I think American History X, Fight Club, I mean, that might just be my 3 right there, unless I'm forgetting something. But I mean,
he's great in Birdman. I'd say Birdman's up there too.
He's excellent in Birdman, but he's a supporting role. I don't mean that to denigrate him. I'm saying, as far as things that are built around him, that are on his shoulders. I mean, this he's had kind of an erratic career. He's still a really great actor, but this was, it's Edward Norton and Spike Lee, and a lot of times I say, when a great director works with a great actor, I'm so disappointed. And you can't ask more from this collaboration, other than, like, why haven't they worked together again?
Yeah. I think it's one of Spike Lee's most kind of underrated, kind of not forgotten movies. But when you think of Spike Lee, you don't think of 25th Hour.
No,
and you should.
And he said in an interview doing press for Highest to Lowest, which I also will join Matt in recommending. I think that movie's terrific. I think if Spike Lee and Denzel are doing anything, it commands our attention. But Spike Lee was asked, I think on Mark Maron's podcast, like, what's the movie that you feel is underrated, and Spike said 25th Hour. He like blurted that right out, because this was not financially successful. I mean, it didn't cost a lot. No one lost money on it. And but zero
it
Oscar.
Might have been too soon, right? So like United 93 came out, like
06.
06. And I think that did well. And and I think it just might have been too raw. I mean, I think the opening is it's Ground Zero.
Yeah, this is another opening credit sequence in this year. In a year with Panic Room, Die Another Day, and Catch Me If You Can, that is stunning. And it's you see Ground Zero. There's a scene in this movie where it's one shot. Barry Pepper and Philip Seymour Hoffman have like what feels like a 5-minute scene. They step away from a window, and Ground Zero is behind them, and you still see them cleaning up. It is 8-9 months later, because they shot this in the summer of 02.
We're not talking like a reenactment of D-Day. I mean, it's like it was the cleanup. That's why Spike Lee shot it so quickly. Like,
Yeah. So this movie is not
perfect movie at the perfect time.
Right? Yeah. And I think you're right. I mean, I don't know that the 9/11 thing, I think even if 9/11 were stripped from this movie, which would be a mistake, it is a I won't say bleak, but it is an adult drama. I mean, it is a guy going to jail, and he's worried that he either will be killed. He's certainly sure he's going to be raped in jail. I mean, he knows that he's not going to come out the same person, even if he survives his prison sentence. So 25th Hour. So Matt, let me hear your number 4.
Memento, which Memento really should be a 1999 movie. I mean, like he was conceiving it and writing it in like 1992. This movie is not an aughts movie. This is a 90s movie that came out in 2000. Just like Jim Jarmusch's Ghost Dog came out in 2000, but that movie is a 90s movie, right? Like, right. Memento is kind of the last of that kind of movie I think that we've ever seen. And people have tried to replicate it. They tried to do the reverse, the movie that I hate more than anything. What's that?
Irreversible?
Irreversible. Yeah, fucking hate that movie. Irreversible does the whole backwards thing. And I think that from an artistic standpoint, it was done really well, but it was shock value. Memento is done backwards and forwards in a way that only Christopher Nolan can do on a blackboard and make sense, right? And you see him do this again in Dunkirk. He does this a lot with like multiple time periods working at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's the most perfect example of first shot, last shot, right? Like how you have to bookend your movie with a opening shot, closing shot.
Yeah.
And it's him in the car, and it's because his life is a loop, and you watch him in just one part of that loop.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the movie, you know that loop, but it's a self-fulfilling loop. He doesn't want to fill the void.
Mm-hmm.
It's a movie about self-loathing. It's a movie about trauma. It's a movie about not being able to let go, not being able to move forward. And so he's in an emotional loop. And so the movie is a loop. So it's not just a gimmick.
Right.
The only thing that I don't like about Memento is the black and white forward stuff.
Interesting.
Because like, I feel like Nolan was a little worried that the audience wasn't going to be able to follow the movie if it was just moving back in time. And so he had to have this exposition heavy. No, it's Nolan at his worst, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exposition heavy. Guy Pearce just talking on the phone, explaining who he is and what the plot is and what he's doing to the audience, and comparing it to somebody that he met when he was doing insurance. Mm-hmm. I would love to see a reunion of Guy Pearce and Christopher Nolan at some point. I think that Guy Pearce has grown a lot as an actor. Which is interesting. So he was a bodybuilder when he was younger, and he thinned out to be an actor.
Yeah.
And Memento was kind of like his introduction to Hollywood, and it couldn't have gone any better, right? It's like perfect movie, perfect time, perfect place. Memento launched so many people's careers.
Yeah.
And on the back of The Matrix, it was what's her name?
Carrie-Anne Moss.
Yeah, Carrie-Anne Moss had just come off The Matrix, and then did this movie. Where the hell did she go? She's fucking fantastic.
She's so great. And Joe Pantoliano had also just done The Matrix, but he's somebody who's been around forever. Yeah, she is so great. The scene where she's basically saying, I'm going to fucking use you, and you're not even going to know about it, is one of the
so brutal
best moments of the 2000s for me. Because because it's like, obviously it's a tricky role because it's like, she's like, the beautiful woman in a film noir. But that's a scene where things really turn. And I remember seeing that scene for the first time and being like, this is amazing. As impressed as I was.
Femme fatale. You would have had no idea that the movie was a femme fatale movie until that moment. Like, what a great turn.
Yeah. And I agree. She, like, I mean, I've said this about 100,000 women just in the 10 episodes that we've done. Really misused, because I think she's a great actress. Obviously, she's very beautiful. And I mean, she did work, but it's always frustrating, and we could just say misogyny and call it a day. But great pick. Great pick. Memento's a great movie. My number 4 pick is Michael Clayton. So similar to Dark Knight, this masquerades as one thing just to make it more palatable to people. So when I saw the trailer for this, I was like, this looks like a 90s style John Grisham thriller. And which I didn't dislike those movies. But when you watch it, so many asshole directors say that, like, oh, this is a movie that's like feels like it's from the 70s. Michael Clayton really does feel like it's from the 70s, just in terms of its pace, in terms of its worldview. It's set in the present day, I hasten to add. And yeah, I think this movie, as far as its 70s feel, really walks the walk. I really feel like George Clooney doesn't have the Oscar baiting vanity that I felt Syriana was. Like, he doesn't gain 50 pounds for this. He doesn't make himself ugly. He still looks like George Clooney physically, but he wears this sort of look of defeat on him that's perfect for the character. This is not a guy, if I read this incredible script, that I would have said, oh, let's get George Clooney. Infamously, Denzel Washington passed on this part and said that he regretted it. He said when he saw the movie, he regretted it and makes a movie with Dan Gilroy about 10 years later. So I think just as a piece of writing, this might be the best script of the 2000s. Just isolating it as a piece of writing, I think it's just, I'm a huge Tony Gilroy fan, but this is his high watermark. I just think like it's really tight plot wise. The characters are really engaging. I think it handles exposition incredibly well. I think every scene is the perfect length. I think, you know, it's a weird thing to compare it to, but like Anchorman, I think this is very quotable. It's not as quotable as Anchorman, but I think that they're just lines in this movie. None of them are particularly famous, but they're lines from this movie that I really just think about a lot. And I don't know how much sense they make out of context, but I'll give you, I think, my favorite one, which nobody quotes. There's a scene where George Clooney, it's the last scene that George Clooney has with Tom Wilkinson, where he's making his second or third appeal to Tom Wilkinson to just, you know, to just behave. And George Clooney says, there's only one wrong move here. You got your arms wrapped around it. And I just love that line.
Uh-huh.
I just think it's a great line. And, I think, if they made this movie today, obviously it wouldn't be theatrical, but I think an even worse thing would happen. They would make this a series. They would make this a streaming series. And I think that they would stretch it way too thin. And I think Alan Foreman and I talked a lot about in our No Country episode, No Country, There Will Be Blood, which you've already talked about, and Michael Clayton all come out in the same year. In fact, this movie shares the cinematographer of There Will Be Blood. Robert Elswit shot this also. All three of them have ambiguous endings, and Alan and I talked a lot about, I won't redo the conversation, but I chose this movie as the best movie of 2007, even though I really like No Country. In fact, I think No Country might be the best picture winner of the 2000s. That's a list I'm working on right now that we're not going to go into now. But what I love about the ending of this movie is that there's two types of ambiguity. There's what happens and what does it mean. I really love what does it mean. I really hate what happens. I don't like the ending of The Sopranos because it's like they just didn't end it. Now, I wasn't into The Sopranos up to that point. I felt after season 3, it kind of went up its own ass anyway, so I wasn't angry about it. I think that the ending of Michael Clayton is perfect because the plot is wrapped up. Michael Clayton he's not a detective, but he solves the case. Everything's tied up. But there's this scene which they came up with on the day. Tony Gilroy did not know how to end this movie. He knew how the plot would end. He didn't know what the last shot was. And pretty close to on the day, he just put Clooney in a cab and had him say, give me $50 worth, just drive. And it's not coincidentally like the end of The Graduate, where you have a character who doesn't know what's ahead. Now, this is 50 times sadder because The Graduate's about a kid who has his whole life ahead of him. He's 21 years old. This is a guy who's 46 years old, probably going to lose his job because he fucked up this merger. He doesn't do anything illegal or unethical. He's not getting disbarred, but he's getting fired from that firm. I mean, as a lawyer, you could probably he costs his firm millions of dollars by sending this woman to jail. And, he doesn't know what's next. Like, he solved this case, he avenged his friend, but so what? And I think that's the kind of ambiguity that I like. I think a lesser movie would be him going to Tilda Swinton like, I want $10 million, her not answering, and them cutting the black. That's the shitty version of this movie. And then they're like, no, like, it doesn't matter what happens. Like, what do you think happens? Like, the answer's yours. You do my job for me, like.
Yeah, so I agree with you, and 100% agree with you with comparing it to There Will Be Blood, because the plot is over.
Yeah.
What happens next with Daniel Plainview? No idea. Does he reconcile with his son? No idea.
Does he get away with the murder? Alan and I talked about that. He might get away with that murder.
Oh no, he totally gets away with the murder. But like, it's what happens now, but not. It wraps up the plot, like you're saying, and it feels satisfying, right?
Yeah.
And that's the it doesn't matter that counts. If you've seen the new Catherine Bigelow movie,
I have. Yeah.
So that's a what happens ambiguity that just fucking sorry, I don't dig that. I need an ending to my story.
Yeah.
But I want an ending that I can think about, like what happens to the character next, not what happens in the fucking movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the thread. that
and so Tony Gilroy, like the Gilroys are kind of like the Scotts, only more indie, I'd say, right? And so like they're both fantastic writers. Dan Gilroy's screenplay for Nightcrawler is one of the most fascinating screenplays I've ever read.
Nightcrawler is yeah.
Oh yeah, and Tony Gilroy's screenplay for Michael Clayton is one of the best screenplays I've ever read.
Yeah,
I'd say the only screenplay that's better than Michael Clayton on paper is Ted Talley's Silence of the Lambs. Is a perfect screenplay, and the fact that you have both of these Gilroys making interesting movies right now in current Hollywood, is such a blessing, I think, for us as audience members. But Michael Clayton, great movie. Now I just wish that I wish someone would deep fake Denzel into that role, because that would have been amazing.
Yeah, and I think it was very magnanimous of him to admit that Denzel in this movie would have been great. This is Clooney's best performance, and George Clooney's
hands down. Like this movie, I think, gave Clooney an extra 20 years of good faith. Right, like he's been chasing the dragon on that performance ever since it came out, and I'm not a Clooney hater. I think he's fine. I think he picks. I think the movies he picks are slightly on the boring side, maybe, just to be polite about it.
Yeah, well, I'll say, Clooney after this gives two other performances that I really like, Up in the Air and The Descendants, and I think that he goes on kind of a run in the late 2000s where he's really working.
Movies that I don't like.
Yeah, well, but this is his best performance. I'd say Out of Sight is I'd say Out of Sight might be the best movie he's made, but Michael Clayton is definitely.
Out of Sight is definitely his most fun. Like that's the most fun I've ever had watching George Clooney, and that includes all the Ocean's movies.
Yeah, Out of Sight is tremendous. So
I love that movie. That's a great movie.
Yeah,
you should have a whole pod just about that movie.
Well, we'll get to it at some point when we talk about 1998 or the 90s in general. So Matt, what is your number 3 movie for the 2000s?
My number 3 movie actually hits on something you said about Michael Clayton about the ending. The plot is wrapped up, but the character is not wrapped up. Castaway is my number 3 movie.
Great pick.
So Castaway, as I'm sure you've talked about, What Lies Beneath was shot in between Tom Hanks having to lose weight and grow a beard. And Zemeckis was still making movies with real people. It's before he did Beowulf and Polar Express. And so, like for a good 20 years, up until Flight, which is another fantastic Denzel, this should be the Denzel pod. Zemeckis took a break from making real movies, I'd say, to experiment with new technology.
Yeah.
And good for him, right? If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have Back to the Future and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Like, if anybody can figure out technology and story, I think that what's the movie he just did that I don't think worked as well?
Here. A movie I kind of like. It's not. It's really fascinating experiment. That's all I'll say about it. Here is definitely.
What I'll say too. It is an experiment that I feel like if he makes another movie on the heels of Here, built around what he learned by making Here, I'm sure it'll be amazing.
Yeah.
Because he still has, I think, 2 or 3 really good films left in him that we haven't seen yet.
I hope so.
And so Castaway was kind of like the best of Robert Zemeckis. Half that movie was shot in a parking lot and was just composited to make this never-ending island where all the waves are crashing and he can't escape, right? And it's where you have this convergence of perfect actor, perfect director, perfect cinematographer, perfect editor, like perfect everything, right?
Yeah.
These things don't happen very often. It happened with Taxi Driver. It happened with like Indiana Jones. Like there are a few movies where it happened with Jaws. Any number of things, any number of variables could have changed and the movie wouldn't have worked. It's Tom Hanks talking to a volleyball, right? Having all of those things kind of come together in such a perfect way, it was remarkable. And the plane crash sequence still holds up and is still fucking terrifying.
Amazing.
And when he comes back to the world, a world that he doesn't recognize anymore, they don't linger on it long enough for me to want to leave the theater. They do just enough. He buys a new volleyball. The movie literally ends with him at a crossroads, right? Like he drives up, he returns the mail to the woman who's the sculpture, the metal sculpture artist.
Yeah.
And it's like that was the thing that was keeping him alive. Like, I have to deliver this package. I work for FedEx. This is who I am. And it kind of helped him get over his depression and work towards, and all of the symbolism of it turns into the sail and of the boat that he makes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work out with Helen Hunt because it shouldn't have worked out with Helen Hunt. The easy version of that movie is he runs through the airport and she gives him a hug. And,
right.
The music swells and they end up together. Zemeckis didn't take that path. He went a step further and he's like, well, what happens now? And he delivers the package. And then his truck like drives up to a literal crossroads.
Yeah.
And the movie ends.
Yeah.
Because we don't need to know what happens next. The plot is over, but we're like, oh, I wish I knew what happened next with that character because you're so invested. So Castaway, and it's just such a perfect performance. It's Tom Hanks in his, the height of just his power as an actor. I think Toy Story 3 was right around that time too. And he was just doing a lot of interesting work. And so the fact that he was able to do this and commit a year to losing the weight and just commit to this role for a year for an in-demand actor.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, right? Like,
yeah, Castaway was the movie I picked as the best movie of 2000 in our very first episode. I think, yes, to everything that you said, a couple things I want to just piggyback on. I think I said this even before Castaway came out, I think Robert Zemeckis is probably still the best utilizer of technology that we have, even more than Spielberg, who's no slouch himself. And I only compare them because Spielberg was his mentor, produced a lot of his early movies, Back to the Future being, the most famous of those. I think there's so much incredible CGI in this movie that we don't know is CGI. Like you said, the island, the waves, changing the direction the wind blows. That is what CGI should be used for. It is a tool to do things that are invisible. And I think the plane crash sequence is stunning, rivaled only by the plane crash sequence in Flight, which is the first live action movie he makes 12 years after this. I think this is really high on my list of Zemeckis. I think I have it like maybe 3, or it might even be number 3. I don't have it in front of me. But yeah, I think that Tom Hanks has never been better. And you're right. This is completely the apex of wrapping up a decade where he was the biggest movie star in the world and an acclaimed actor. And I mean, the scene, it sounds so stupid for people who don't know what this movie is. It's a scene, where Tom Hanks loses his volleyball, and it is one of the most gut-wrenching things I've ever seen. It is so incredibly sad, and if you were to describe that out of context, you would get a well-deserved sort of eye roll or mockery. I think...
And who would have... And it's like, until Philadelphia, who would have known that Tom Hanks was capable of this, right?
What?
And so, the beauty of Castaway is, so the scene that you just described where he has to lose Wilson in order to be saved, right? He has to lose Wilson in order to reconnect with humanity. Fine, I get that as a story point. That is gut-wrenching because of it's like he's losing it's his lowest point, whatever fucking screenplay terminology. It's his lowest point when he's losing Wilson. Backtrack to the beginning, to earlier in the movie, where he learns how to make fire and he's dancing around going, I have made fire. And it's like Tom Hanks at his comedic best.
Sure.
And so you have him on both sides of like the drama comedy, like you were saying.
The two masks,
the two masks. No other actor, I mean, maybe Colin Farrell, right? I mean, what other actor can pull off that in one movie?
I think if you were to go back 30, 40 years, Jack Lemmon could have done this. You beat me to it. Yeah. I think Jack Lemmon could have done this part where it's a really likable guy.
This is a Jack Lemmon part.
Yeah.
This is,
Because it's a guy who was incredible at comedy, incredible at drama, who was likable, who you care about in every movie.
I wouldn't have even thought of that. Jack Lemmon and Tom Hanks in Castaway. Yeah, someone deep fake that too. That'd be great.
Another overlap. My number 3 is Memento. So you said a lot of what I would say, so I will try not to go over the same ground. I think that one of my core arguments for the 2000s not being so strong is that there weren't cool independent movies. Memento is the last cool independent movie, the last thing to come out of Sundance, not forever, but well into the following decade. And when we get to the following decade, when we get to that year, there's a movie that made me think of Memento, not literally, but just as far as like an indie movie that came out of Sundance that I could not stop thinking about. Memento is the last time that happens. And again, that's really fuels most of my antipathy for this decade that you guys have heard me sort of work through these past 11 episodes. Um, yeah, so to me, this is like Christopher Nolan's The Killing or Reservoir Dogs. It's like this really small movie that gets him started, but to me, Memento is my second favorite Christopher Nolan movie, and Reservoir Dogs might be my second or third favorite Tarantino movie, and The Killing is like my third or fourth favorite Kubrick movie. And I bring those directors up because those guys, Kubrick never made a movie like The Killing again. He never made the same movie twice. Tarantino's never going to make anything as small as Reservoir Dogs again. And Nolan has explicitly said he would never make a small budget movie because why would I? Why would I have access to all this money? It's nothing if not honest. I would love to see Christopher Nolan, and I'm dreaming, do something this tight and this focused. It's never going to happen. I'll just say I'll speak to my personal taste. The only movie of his that I like better than this is Inception. And there's a lot of overlap there in terms of like, Inception obviously is a big budget movie. But just in terms of the kind of movie that it is in a lot of ways. I'm a big Nolan fan. Yeah, I just think Memento, we've talked about it when you did it on your list, and that's fine. I just think that um this was, when I saw it, I was like, wow, this filmmaker is going to be somebody to watch, and he obviously has fulfilled that promise. I did not think he was going to become what he is. I really think that the baton has passed from Spielberg to Nolan, where Nolan is the most powerful filmmaker around.
Oh yeah, hands down.
He is enough. He is like in that Hitchcock Spielberg class where his name on a movie will sell the movie, and Dunkirk kind of proves that.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Oppenheimer too, but Oppenheimer, I'm saying Dunkirk has no famous actors. Like the lead of I'm saying like Oppenheimer does prove it too.
I think you're right, because like anybody else makes the Odyssey and it loses the studio $150 million or $1 billion. Like this movie's already got pre-sales making it break even, right? It's crazy.
Crazy. It's insanity. Yeah, so we talked about Memento. So Matt, let me have your number 2 for the top 10 movies of the 2000s.
So this one won't shock you. I'm really curious about our last 2 because we haven't had any that have been equal that have hit. I don't know. I think maybe our number 1 might hit together. But for number 2, it's WALL-E. You know my affinity for WALL-E. I love WALL-E. This was the aughts were the golden age of Pixar. Toy Story came out in the 90s, but if you look at it now, it's a little janky. They were still figuring out the technology. But in the 2000s, you had Finding Nemo, Toy Story 3, The Incredibles, WALL-E, Up. These were all in the 2000s. And it's kind of like the golden age of Disney when they started with like Beauty and the Beast, and they went all the way through like Little Mermaid and all the ones that you think of as like the princess movies that are so huge.
Right.
And what Pixar did was they never did the same thing twice, even though the formula was always the same. It was like 2 characters of different worldviews, and they have to navigate something, right? Like in Finding Nemo, it's like the clownfish who's really nervous, and then Dory, who's like the complete opposite, and they have to find Nemo. In Monsters Inc., it's they're 2 different monsters they got to navigate. In Inside Out, it's like happiness and sadness, and it's literally always the same movie. And in WALL-E, it's the robot versus the broken robot. But the reason that I love WALL-E so much is because I consider WALL-E to be the opposite side of the coin of the Joker in Dark Knight. WALL-E is an agent of chaos, just like the Joker. And in Dark Knight, wherever Joker goes and you hear that music, right, from Hans Zimmer, even if he's not in the scene, you know that's the Joker, and you know what someone's being manipulated, and you know that shit's going to get fucked up, right?
Yeah.
Because the Joker is just a force of nature, and everything he touches is ruined. WALL-E is an agent of chaos as well, but everything he touches gets better. And so when he's navigating his world by himself, he's making this empty planet better by keeping alive movies and dance and music and cockroaches, and right. And then when Eve comes and she's, she has no interest in him, but he forces her to like him. He essentially breaks her into liking him. And then he goes into space, and humans are, they're disengaged and they're unconnected, and he breaks them. And then he breaks all of the broken robots and shows them that they have worth. And then they're the heroes of the story, this cast of outcasts, right? And this band of outcasts. And so, like, wherever Wally goes, he destroys the status quo and makes it better. And so I just love that about the movie. And it also has a version of La Vie en Rose sung by Louis Armstrong that ended up being the song Rachel and I got married to. And, whenever I think of the perfect couples in cinema history, right? Wally and Eve it's a perfect pairing. And so it's got a great Peter Gabriel song at the end of it. The score is fantastic. It looks amazing. It's got a Criterion and still looks amazing. And the first 30 minutes of that movie, just like There Will Be Blood, no dialogue.
Yeah.
What a risk for Pixar. What a risk.
Yeah.
And it paid off. And it's unlike Up, where you have this amazing opening for Up, and then it's like dogs flying planes, like the fuck, right? And so I think that's your line. I think I stole that from you.
But not only did you steal it from me, I talked about it just last episode because Eric Garcia spotlighted the opening, whatever it is, 10, 15 minutes of Up, and as something that he was so moved by that he could never watch it again. And I said I agreed, that it's that might be Pixar's most poignant moment. That's a debate we could have maybe in a minute. But the movie from that point on, it was dogs flying airplane. Yeah, I mean, I was.
Yeah, and Wally's the opposite. It's like,
yeah,
like it could have completely fallen apart when they got to space.
It's interesting because Pixar really is the dominant force of the 2000s because the MCU doesn't get started till like 2008. So the MCU really takes over the next decade. It's really just getting started, and Dark Knight's right at the end. But Pixar, right from the beginning of this decade is up and running. I haven't seen all the Pixar movies. The ones I've seen, I like. I mean, but yeah, they are, and they do make a lot of big swings. I mean, I think WALL-E and at least the sequence of Up, they admirably take a lot of risks, but I think because they know they had such a built-in audience, Pixar specifically, I always admire that about them, and I think a lot of things they've done before and since, a lot of their screenplays get nominated, just on their own. Like, I know that Inside Out does, and The Incredibles does, and a few other things. I'm not as expert on these things, even now that I have small children. But yeah, Pixar definitely is a dominant force, mostly for the good in this. So it's cool that you had that on your list. So number 2 on my list is Inglourious Bastards. I talked about this movie just last episode, so this might be redundant, but in case you haven't seen it, in between Jackie Brown and Inglourious Bastards are Quentin Tarantino movies that I think are well-made, ambitious, but I just don't connect to, except for the needle drops. He's the best that's ever lived at needle drops, even in his movies that don't work. So I was not that excited about Inglourious Bastards when it came out. I knew I was going to see it because it's a director that I, still respected, and really liked it when I saw it, but this movie has lingered in a way. Quentin Tarantino is the only director where I cannot with a certainty tell you what my favorite movie of his is. It is between Inglourious Bastards, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and sometimes it's Reservoir Dogs. It's one of those 3. I can rank the other ones 4 to 9 without blinking. And I think this movie's really kind of something special, and I think it ends this decade on a very sort of hopeful note. I think I said this last week. I think his genius for casting has never been on better display than it is in this movie. Obviously, Christoph Waltz is somebody we in America did not know. He wins the Academy Award for this, which I think, to tie it back to Dark Knight for a second, I think if Heath Ledger was still alive, he would have won an Oscar. I don't think it was just because he died. I think that Christoph Waltz kind of proves that, okay, they will reward this kind of performance, being like a big villain performance. And Christoph Waltz, obviously, it was merit-based because no one knew who he was. But also Melanie Laurent and Daniel Brühl and Michael Fassbender and, all those people are still working today and have done really interesting work. And I think as fast as and tangential as like Tarantino speaks, um, this is like really patient filmmaking. There's so many scenes in this movie that really take their time almost to an absurd degree. And two scenes in this movie, the very opening and the scene in the basement, could be like what like one act plays. Like you could stage them as one act plays and they would be really, really interesting. I'm not suggesting that, by the way. That might be kind of lame to do, but they are worthy. They can sustain a one act play. So yeah, I mean, I talked so much about this last week, but Inglourious Basterds to me is the second best movie of this decade.
So I'm not going to add anything to that because my number one film of the decade is Inglourious Basterds.
So let's go right into it.
And so I could just transition right into it because I thought I honestly thought that you and I were going to be eye to eye on Inglourious Basterds is the best movie of the decade. I'm curious to know what yours is. Huge Tarantino fan. I can easily rank mine. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is my favorite film of his. Inglourious Basterds is my second favorite, and then Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, blah 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 blah. Right.
That's very close to my list, and you know what? Hollywood, having just read an incredibly great book about the making of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which I highly recommend to you. Not quite as in depth as the Shining book, but Tarantino gave the author access while he was making it, so it's like everything.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
That currently, as the day of this recording, is number one. Bastards. So my ranking, I think, actually matches yours today.
Yeah, but it changes. For me, the top two don't change. It's Hollywood and Bastards.
Okay.
And the reason Bastards, so this is the best use of vignettes, I think, in Tarantino's career. Okay. And one of the things that annoys me a little bit about Tarantino is how he breaks up his films into vignettes. It works in Reservoir Dogs because you got to break away from the warehouse.
Right.
Like, it works in Pulp Fiction because they're all independent stories, and it's kind of like a Robert Altman thing where they all kind of intersect but don't, right? And so, but with Inglourious Basterds, if you stayed with any one of those plots for too long, it would have outlived its welcome. And when he introduces Christoph Waltz in the beginning, by the time you see him again, you're terrified. If that first scene in Inglourious Basterds doesn't work, right? Like, and if he doesn't scream out like, "Au revoir, Shoshana," and it circles all the way back around at the end to Shoshana fucking killing everybody, like bookends that movie so beautifully.
Yeah.
And it's Brad Pitt's. I think it's his best performance. I think like everything about that movie, his borrowing of scores from other films, right? Like he's done it well in other movies, but it all led up to doing it perfectly in Inglourious Basterds, and it was the first of the three. I think it was the first of the three fantasy ending movies for him, right?
Well, historical fiction, like the fact that he because watching it, Eric Garcia, we talked about it just last week. He talked about how, they're not going to kill Hitler, but they kill Hitler. Like that's the thing.
And then in Django Unchained, it's like like revenge porn for slaves, right? Like and then obviously in
the Manson thing
in Hollywood. Yeah. And so it's kind of like his trilogy of fairy tales. And it just works so well that, and it's again, right? It's a pairing of a perfect director at a perfect time with the perfect actors at the perfect ages.
Yeah.
And no one else. I don't think Denzel could have been Aldo Raines. I don't think we can substitute him in for that.
Well, it's funny. Somebody, probably Tarantino himself, said, or maybe somebody else said, I don't know who said it, is that, and maybe this is intentional, maybe this is even obvious, is that it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. Shoshana's the good, Landa's the bad, and Brad Pitt is the ugly, ironically. And it's like you have a character who's evil, a character who's good, and a character who's like, sort of in between, like mostly good, but definitely ethically, like the Brad Pitt character is definitely, a good guy, but is going to cut corners and we're not sure we totally trust him. So that's a take on that movie that I always liked. And that's obviously a huge lodestar for Tarantino, that movie. So it's possible Tarantino himself said this and I'm just mashing it up and attributing it to somebody else. But yeah, Inglourious Basterds is a great movie.
It's also the best use of Mike Myers in the whole decade.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like there's really, he's so great at casting. and he's so great. I mean, obviously, like John Travolta is sort of like the most famous example of like reviving someone, but I think he's so great at just plugging people into roles and knowing what they can do and stretching them. I mean, so many people like, Bridget Fonda was never really given a chance to do anything all that interesting except for Jackie Brown, and she's fantastic in that. And she's like every scene she's in is with Robert De Niro, and she's so great with Robert De Niro, who's very minimalist in that movie. I mean, he's great in that movie, but it's not like she's
I
with
think it's
Robert.
one of his last great performances.
It's definitely his last consistently great performance. It's definitely the last time he was consistent. Like that year, like Copland, Wag the Dog, and that all in 1 year. He definitely was
I
still
love Copland.
right.
Yeah.
He's definitely still De Niro. He's definitely still doing interesting stuff. But yeah, I mean, Tarantino's just so great.
I mean, even so, Robert Forster, right? Like,
yeah, another one.
Like, I don't think he gets Breaking Bad without
No,
Jackie Brown.
no. And again, Pam Grier's career sadly didn't take off after Jackie Brown, but she's never been better. He puts a movie on pretty much on her fucking shoulders, and she carries it. It's just that the movie wasn't successful, shamefully. But I said the same thing about Linda Fiorentino. I think Pam Grier, somebody who would have her own show on streaming, would have a rack of Emmys. Somebody would create a show for her to lead or be a key supporting role.
Yeah, and I think that's a whole nother pod for you to do at some time with like how misused like powerful women were.
Oh my God, yeah.
When they were in their prime, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's great. Pam Grier is younger than we are now in Jackie Brown. So time for my number one. I opened this list by saying that for me, The Dark Knight fell a few yards short of a masterpiece. Well, for me, Casino Royale is not only a masterpiece, but it is the best movie of the 2000s. For me, it was more than just a huge comeback and a return for form for James Bond. It's actually one of the very best James Bond movies, regardless of what it's following. So for the record, I have all these movies ranked on Letterboxd. I rank Casino Royale 5th out of 25. So it's in between The Spy Who Loved Me and The Living Daylights. After the increasing and justly infamous CGI of the Pierce Brosnan movies, this was the first one in a long time to have tactile, practical stunts that harken back to the glory days of the Bond stunt work in the 80s. The director named John Glenn, not the astronaut. If you look at the stunt work in the John Glenn movies, it's just incredible, not just because it's real stuntmen doing real stunts, just the inventiveness of the stunts. The parkour sequence in this movie is the best action sequence of the decade. It's one of the rare times that the Bond people saw a thing that was trendy, utilized it before it got played out, and, introduced at least me to what parkour even was. The guy that got to do it with Sebastian Fouchon is one of the fathers of parkour. They had him do it himself. That scene is stunning, and it's filled with action sequences that are just stunning. And again, they're done practically. CGI is involved, but used very sparingly. They're working from an Ian Fleming novel, the very first Ian Fleming novel, which they never had the rights to, and they made it contemporary without being desperate about it. They're playing Texas Hold'em instead of Chemin de Fer. I think that's a really good switch to make. Daniel Craig was an offbeat and ballsy choice to play this part, and only one other Bond actor had a better debut movie. Hint, it's not who you think. I want to talk about Eva Green really quick. I think she is a Mount Rushmore Bond girl, and I think that she's sort of the dragon that the Craig movies chase throughout his entire tenure, sometimes even kind of getting close. I think that, this series is filled with beautiful, sexy, stunning women. I think Eva Green is in that sort of Diana Rigg class of not only being very beautiful, but a great actress and given a great character to play. As I'm recording this, we have a new James Bond to cast. This is going to be a very high bar to clear. So yeah, I don't know why you're surprised, but yeah, Casino Royale is the best movie of the 2000s for me.
One of the best Bond songs by Chris Cornell.
Absolutely.
In a way that it, just like with Live and Let Die, the song didn't outshine the movie. It fit with the movie.
Yeah.
And the opening title sequence is so beautiful. Stunning. Right? Like just so beautiful.
Yeah.
I always thought it was funny, James Blonde instead of James Bond. And then when I saw Daniel Craig, because I hadn't really known who he was,
right.
I was sold with him as James. My favorite James Bond is Timothy Dalton. And so I like the big brutish, kind of James Bond over
Yeah.
the sillier, and hopefully, actually, I hope they go a little bit more towards the Roger Moore archetype of James Bond this next time around, because we've already gotten the super serious.
I agree.
And
We can have a little more fun. I'll be the
yeah, I
first to
think we
say
can
that.
have more fun. And after Casino Royale, I thought they were going to have more fun,
Mm-hmm.
but then they were chasing the Bourne movies,
Yeah.
and they were trying to out green grass,
Yeah.
and they just lost me. I was never a big James Bond fan,
Mm-hmm.
but after Casino Royale, I was excited for the next Bond movie, which I think was Quantum of Solace.
Yes.
And they lost me at Quantum of Solace. So great choice for you on a number one. Not on my list, but definitely a quality movie, and one of the better, I'd say, one of the better Bond villains of the modern era. I like,
Yeah,
I love
Mads
Marv,
Mikkelsen.
however you pronounce his name.
Mads Mikkelsen, worth mentioning. Yeah, he's not one of the more celebrated villains. He's certainly not as celebrated as someone like Javier Bardem, who comes 2 movies later. But Mads Mikkelsen, this is an early English language movie for him, and he's again somebody who for almost 20 years now has been consistently in a lot of stuff and IP and small movies, and really just no one else looks like this dude. And
it was a risk. It was a risk for the Broccoli's.
Oh yeah,
because usually there's a lot of stunt casting surrounding the villain, right?
Yeah,
and like even Robert Carlyle was stunt casting because everyone knew him from Trainspotting, and I think maybe Once Upon a Time had already come out. I don't know.
Right.
But no, it hadn't. That was afterwards.
Yeah.
But like, there was no stunt casting here.
No.
Like they cast it on merit.
Yeah.
And it's a David Arnold score, right?
Fantastic score. His best one for all 5 Bond movies that he ever did.
Great score. It's shot beautifully. It's got a lot of color, and we were just talking about like pushing the contrast and muting the colors.
Yeah.
Casino Royale is a colorful movie. It's a really colorful movie.
It's lush.
And you can see it. Yeah, it's lush. I'd say it's lush. You can see the production value.
Yeah.
It's a fun movie. It doesn't drag. It doesn't take itself too seriously as the later ones do.
Yeah.
Great choice. Great choice.
Thank you. I'll say one last word because you talked about the production value. This is the last movie of production designer Peter Lamont, who came up in the Bond franchise. But Peter Lamont won an Oscar for Titanic and also did Aliens and True Lies. And this was his last movie. He retired. So want to shout out Peter Lamont. So Matt, let's just run down our lists without going into them. Just 10 to 1. Just list your 10 movies and then we'll move on to the next thing.
Number 10, Pan's Labyrinth. Number 9, Shaun of the Dead. Number 8, In Bruges. Number 7, $1 Million Baby. Number 6, There Will Be Blood. Number 5, Children of Men. Number 4, Memento. Number 3, Castaway. Number 2, Wall-E. And number 1, Inglourious Basterds.
And for me, number 10, Dark Knight. Number 9, Anchorman. Number 8, Catch Me If You Can. Number 7, In Bruges. Number 6, Match Point. Number 5, 25th Hour. Number 4, Michael Clayton. Number 3, Memento. Number 2, Inglourious Basterds. Number 1, Casino Royale. So we had a lot of overlap, which is interesting. I knew there'd be some overlap. And so, Matt, do you want to talk about honorable mentions? Just list them. You don't have to rank them. You could just list them.
Yeah, I'll talk about honorable mentions, but not about movies. About just things. Just things in the aughts. First off, Tangiers. It's a track off of Bourne Ultimatum. John Powell.
Yeah.
That is the best singular piece of music in the entire decade. And it's John Powell was building on themes from Bourne Identity and Bourne Supremacy. But Tangiers, it's like 9 minutes long.
Yeah.
And every time I listen to it, my heart starts beating faster.
Yeah.
Love that piece of music. So shout out to that.
Okay.
The audition scene in Mulholland Drive. I am not a David Lynch fan.
Mm-hmm.
And, but in Mulholland Drive, for those who haven't seen it, it introduced us to
Naomi Watts.
And they introduced her as a horrible actress. Mm. And so in the movie, intentionally, she's playing this very soap opera style actress. And then about a third of the way into the movie, she has an audition. She's an ingenue actress, and she has this audition that she had practiced. She had rehearsed one way, being very theatrical and over the top. And then she goes into the room and she does the audition, the complete opposite of what she had planned. And it's like super sexually tense and super quiet and super, it's just like, it is the most amazing thing about that movie. And I don't think that, unfortunately, it's sort of like her Citizen Kane. I don't think Naomi Watts has ever come even close to that scene in that movie. So the audition scene in Mulholland Drive, everything about the movie Moon. Duncan Jones, it's David Bowie's son. It's Sam Rockwell dancing, and usually his dancing annoys me. It doesn't in this movie.
Okay.
It's got Kevin Spacey as the voice of the robot. They used a bunch of practical effects instead of CG because they didn't have the money for CG. And Moon, it's got a great score by Clint Mansell. Great, fantastic, sci-fi, grounded, small, claustrophobic movie that I think gets overlooked by David Bowie's son. And it's really the only good movie he's ever made, unfortunately. After that, I'd say that there are filmmakers in this decade that made good movies. Even Bryan Singer made a good movie.
Oh,
he made Valkyrie.
Valkyrie's not bad. Yeah, Valkyrie's an interesting movie.
So he made Valkyrie. You got Wes Anderson making Fantastic Mr. Fox, right? You got Curse of the Were-Rabbit. You got like all these really kind of quirky, interesting movies that came out that I don't think could come out anymore. If I look back here real quick, like Good Shepherd and Last King of Scotland and The Descent is a great horror film. And then you got you got to give credit to Slither that introduced us to James Gunn, who is now the most powerful person in Hollywood. That was one of his early horror films.
Yeah.
And then you got all these like fun action movies like 16 Blocks and Four Brothers and these things that feel like old throwback, like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was in the 2000s, right?
Yes,
like these like Shane Black kind of like fun action movies that didn't take themselves too seriously. I think those are all great. The Fog was really great. So there are a lot of good horror movies that came out. Even though we were also introduced to torture porn, right? Like Saw and Hostel, which kind of ruined horror movies for a couple decades. I would like to highlight Leonardo DiCaprio in Blood Diamond. I was of the opinion of, he was really good, but Matt Damon would have been better in pretty much every Leonardo DiCaprio movie, right? Until Catch Me If You Can and Blood Diamond. And when I first saw Blood Diamond, I was with Rachel, my wife at that time, girlfriend, who Ed introduced me to. Thank you, Ed. And we're in the theater, and I'm like, oh, fucking Leonardo DiCaprio. And then she's like, you always say that. And then like halfway through the movie, I'm like, he's actually really good in this movie. She's like, you always say that. And so apparently I like Leonardo DiCaprio, and I also apparently like tiramisu, which I always think I hate, and then I have it. I'm like, oh, this is delicious. So Leonardo DiCaprio is the tiramisu of actors for me. Up until recently, now I think he's fucking like the best actor we have, and he's still the only actor who can open a movie. Final thing I'll say, and I'll turn it over to you for your honorable mentions, is HBO in this decade. If I go back through my list, they had... Oh, you know what's also an interesting movie that I want to revisit? Simone. Remember that movie?
I never saw it. I know it's with Al Pacino because it's about AI, and it's probably it's Andrew
actress?
Niccol who did Gattaca in the Truman Show, so it's probably very, if not good, at least interesting. That's a movie we should all.
Given like Sora 2 and all this, like which agency is going to sign the first digital actress? Like, I kind of want to revisit that movie.
It's probably going to be a very interesting. That movie may come up a lot in the news, good or bad. I mean, regardless of its quality. Yeah. Simone is something I have never seen and now want to.
Yeah, well, HBO had, in 2001, they had Conspiracy and Wit and 61. 3 movies in 2001. I think Conspiracy is fucking brilliant. I think it's amazing. And then later in the decade, they're putting out other great movies. I think Recall might have been in the 2000s as well. And so they kind of proved that just because it was on HBO or on a streamer now, that they could play with the big boys. And I think it kind of turned the tide as to this is a TV movie, like, and the band played on versus this is a real movie that you have to take seriously.
The line gets blurred. Great. I love that you talked about scenes. I kind of wish I'd done that, but I've talked about a lot of scenes in the previous episodes. I'll add one thing to yours, or not even add. Leonardo DiCaprio is Oscar nominated for Blood Diamond.
Yeah, no, I know. And he deserved it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just saying I didn't know if you remember that. So I'm going to So great list. I kind of wish I prepared mine the same way, but I didn't. My honorable mentions, I'm just going to list these movies. I've talked about, I think, every one of these movies, either in depth or spotlighted something from them. So here's just a list of movies. These aren't ranked. These are just ranked chronologically. Other movies from the 2000s that I think are really good to great. Castaway, Sexy Beast, Heist, Ocean's 11, The Royal Tenenbaums, About a Boy, Unfaithful, Matchstick Men, Collateral, Birth, The Incredibles, Closer, Million Dollar Baby, Munich, The Departed, No Country for Old Men, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, and Duplicity. So those are just movies you should check out. I've talked or spotlighted, I think, every movie on that list. So you should definitely check those out. So Matt, where can people find you if they want to find you?
Mostly in the basement. But other than that, I guess the only place you can really find me is on Script Revolution, which is where I host some of my screenplays that I've written. I know, Ed, I think you're on there as well.
I am on there, and I have not mentioned it. You could find me there as well. I frankly have just forgotten about it. I have not been great about plugging my own wares, so yes, you can find me there as well.
Yeah, so Script Revolution. Other than that, nothing to speak of at this moment. But I am a fan of your Letterboxd lists, so I would plug your Letterboxd on this show as well.
Thank you. Yeah, you can find me on Letterboxd. You could find me on Script Revolution, which Matt just mentioned. You can find some short films I've done on Vimeo. You can find me on Instagram because as we record this, the podcast just launched yesterday, so I definitely going to be more active by the time this one drops. So yeah, this concludes our first season. This concludes the 2000s. I think just to kind of say a final word about where I started with this decade on episode 1 and now, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on. I maintain that the 90s were better and the 2010s were better. I know Matt disagrees with half that statement. I think some movies that guests like Matt have brought up, I will revisit or in some cases see for the first time. I think this has been an interesting place to start this podcast. I think it's been an interesting way to dive into these are movies that we were, they're 25 years ago in some cases, but we were adults when we saw them. And so it's time to announce where the dial of time is taking hindsighting next. So next season, we are turning the dial of time back to the 1980s. 1980s, we're going to talk about the 80s, a decade that I was around for, but was a child. And we'll be talking about the Best Picture winners, of course. I've only seen 7 of the 10, so there's going to be a lot of discovery in that decade, whereas going into this one, I'd seen 9 of the 10. So next season, or next episode, Jennifer Lee Weaver and I discuss the Best Picture of 1980, Ordinary People. Till then, looking forward to looking back.